deep dive discussion where we explore the ideas, strategies, stories, and inspiration that truly matter.
Today our topic is Bruce H. Lipton's book, The Biology of Belief.
And we're going to get right into how your thoughts, maybe your feelings, could actually be shaping your very selves.
Yeah, it's a really different way of looking at our biology, isn't it? The book suggests our beliefs are awareness. They play a much bigger role in our physical health than we usually think.
A much bigger role.
We're really talking about how what's going on inside us, our internal landscape, can influence the external, our biological reality.
Okay, so right off the bat, the big question. Are we basically saying, forget the idea that genes dictate everything about our health? Is that the premise?
That's pretty much the core challenge Lipton throws down, and it came from his own early work, cell biology.
Right.
Looking at the fundamental unit of life, the cell. And what he saw there, well, it really started to shift his whole perspective.
Okay, so that brings us to Chapter 1, Lessons from the Petri Dish. What was happening there? What were the sort of aha moments with those cells?
Well, what's really fascinating is he saw cells weren't just, pre-programmed robots, not at all. They were incredibly responsive to their environment. You change the conditions in the dish, the nutrients, the signals floating around, and the cells would completely change their behavior.
Wow.
It was a really strong early sign that the environment, the surroundings, had huge power over what the cell did, maybe even more than the genes inside.
So it wasn't just this Darwinian dog-eat-dog world inside the Petri dish, more like cooperation.
Exactly. That's a key point he makes. He saw that cells, when they were in a good, nurturing environment, they'd actually work together. They'd thrive together. And yeah, that cooperative vibe really clashed with the purely competitive survival of the fittest idea we often think about at that level. It suggested, an inherent intelligence in cells, a drive to collaborate if things were right.
That's something to think about, even at the microscopic level.
Yeah.
Cooperation matters for well-being.
It really does.
Which I guess sets us up perfectly for Chapter 2. It's the environment, stupid. This is where epigenetics comes in big time, right?
Yes, exactly. And this is where it gets super interesting for you listening, because epigenetics gives us this powerful framework for understanding how your everyday choices really do impact your health.
How so?
Well, the chapter clearly explains how things in your environment, what you eat, your stress levels, even your emotions can actually flip genetic switches, turn them on or off.
Like light switches for genes?
Kind of. It's like your environment is having this constant conversation with your DNA.
So wait, the genes we get from our parents, they aren't necessarily our destiny. That feels huge, especially if you worry about family health history.
It is huge. It offers a real sense of agency, doesn't it? It raises this critical point. If our genes aren't sort of fixed in how they express themselves, then we have a much greater ability to influence our health path through how we live. It's less about the blueprint being the final say,
right,
and more about this ongoing dialogue between your life, your choices, and your DNA.
Okay, moving on. Chapter 3 zooms right in on the magical membrane. Now, I think most of us picture the nucleus, with the DNA as the cell's command center, but Lipton says maybe not.
He makes a strong case that the cell membrane is actually the real brain of the cell.
The membrane, the outer skin.
Yeah. And what's insightful is how he describes it as the cell's, interface with the world outside. Imagine the membrane covered in these tiny little receptors, like antennae, constantly scanning the environment for signals. And when they pick up a signal, they activate other proteins inside the cell effector proteins, which then carry out the response, like, do this now.
So the membrane is actively gathering intel and telling the cell what to do based on what's happening outside, sometimes without even checking in with the nucleus first.
Precisely. It's that constant interaction, that interpretation of environmental cues by the membrane that largely guides the cell's behavior. It shifts the focus, from DNA being the sole boss to this much more dynamic dance between the cell and its world. The cell isn't just blindly following genetic orders, it's actively engaging, really engaging.
Which then leads us into some pretty different territory in Chapter 4, the new physics, talking quantum physics and biology. How do those connect?
Yeah, this is where things get a bit mind-bending, maybe. We start looking at the universe not just as solid stuff, but also as, energy, fields of possibility.
Wait, energy fields.
Right. And Lipton discusses how our perceptions or beliefs might actually influence these energy fields at a really fundamental level. It's almost like before you observe something, it exists as pure potential. And our act of observing it, which is colored by our beliefs, could somehow sort of collapse that potential into a specific reality.
Oh, okay. So are we saying our thoughts could literally have a physical effect?
At an energy level.
Impacting our bodies?
That's the path Lipton explores, yeah. The idea is that thoughts, beliefs, they generate their own energy. And that energy could interact with and maybe even influence our biological systems.
Wow.
It starts to bridge that gap, that perceived gap between mind and body using quantum ideas, suggesting a much, much deeper connection than traditional biology usually talks about.
Which brings us right to the heart of it all in Chapter 5. Biology of belief. This is the main event, isn't it?
Absolutely. This is where Lipton really dives deep into how our beliefs, especially the ones tucked away in our subconscious mind, profoundly shape our biology and, yeah, our health.
The subconscious, that's the part running the show behind the scenes.
Pretty much. It's formed largely when we're young, operates mostly automatically, and it governs the vast majority of our daily reactions, behaviors, even our physiological responses. Huge influence.
And these subconscious beliefs, I'm guessing they're not always helpful.
No, not necessarily. Many can be limiting or negative, often picked up from our environment, our childhood experiences, without us even realizing it. And the crucial link Lipton makes is that these negative subconscious beliefs can trigger stress responses over and over, which leads to this cascade of physiological effects that, well, over time, can really contribute to illness and disease.
But the flip side, positive beliefs.
The flip side is that positive beliefs can foster an internal environment that actively supports health, promotes healing.
And he talks about changing those beliefs, right? Even the subconscious ones.
He does. He touches on techniques, things like affirmations, visualization, as potential tools to try and influence or even reprogram those deeply ingrained subconscious patterns.
Interesting.
It's about making a conscious effort to reshape those automatic responses our bodies have learned.
Okay, Chapter 6. Growth and protection. Seems pretty basic, grow or protect.
It is fundamental, yeah. Lipton explains our bodies are generally in one of two main modes: growth or protection. Simple as that. When we feel safe, supported, our body prioritizes growth, repair, keeping things healthy.
Makes sense.
But when we sense a threat, and this could be a real physical danger or just perceived stress, like a deadline or an argument, the body instantly shifts into protection mode.
And the downside of being stuck in protection mode,
Right.
which happens a lot with modern stress.
Right. The critical piece is understanding that when the body is focused on protection, it literally diverts energy away from those vital growth and repair jobs. Think about it like survival, right? If a tiger's chasing you, your body isn't worried about digesting lunch or fixing a cell. It's all about escape.
Yeah, okay.
The problem is, chronic stress, the non-tiger kind, can keep us locked in that protective state long term. And that can suppress our immune system, slow down healing, basically hinder all those background processes that keep us well.
That really connects the dots between stress and physical health. Okay. Then Chapter 7 shifts gears a bit to conscious parenting. How do parents' beliefs tie into their kids' biology?
This chapter really highlights the incredible influence parents have, starting even before birth. The parents' beliefs, the environment they create, it directly shapes the child's subconscious programming.
Wow, really?
Directly.
Yeah. Those early experiences literally sculpt the neural pathways in a child's developing brain, and that can have really long-lasting effects on their future behavior, how they handle emotions, even their susceptibility to certain health issues down the road.
So it's like parents are, in a way, acting as biological programmers through the environment and beliefs they provide.
That's a good way to put it, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah.
Conscious parenting, in Lipton's view, is about intentionally creating that nurturing environment, cultivating positive belief systems in kids, giving them a strong foundation, mentally and physically. It really emphasizes how much nurture shapes our basic biology.
And finally, the epilogue, spirit and science, kind of brings it all together. It does. Here, Lipton reflects on his own journey, as a scientist, how he came to see the importance of integrating these other dimensions, consciousness, maybe even spirit, into a scientific understanding of biology.
So not just molecules and mechanisms.
Exactly. He suggests that acknowledging these aspects gives us a much more complete, more holistic picture of life. It enriches the biological view.
And the big takeaway from this integrated perspective, what does it empower us, the listener, to do?
I think ultimately it leads to a much greater sense of personal empowerment,
Yeah.
really, by recognizing how deeply our beliefs, our awareness influence our biology.
Yeah.
We realize we're not just passive victims of our genes or our circumstances. We actually have the potential to actively participate in creating our own health and well-being by, taking conscious charge of our inner world.
That's a powerful note to end on, taking charge of our inner world to influence our outer reality.
It's the core message, really.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. Grab Ysh Estayo's latest book on Amazon. Need business consulting, artificial intelligence, book writing, and publishing? Ysh has your back. Contact Ysh Estayo or leave a comment. Until next time, keep diving deep.